So I'm going to take a brown, or if all else fails, use a green board, because I'm going to prepare all of my vegetables on here. And we're going to prepare them and keep them separate on the board. First one that I'm going to prepare is a carrot. So the first thing you'll need to do is to remove the skin. Same as we did when we prepared the carrots for the knife chopping lesson. Hold it on one end, move it around as you're peeling, and then chop off both ends of the carrot. Remove the waste from my board as I go to keep it nice and clean. Now, if you remember back to the knife chopping lesson, we produced a julienne. That's what we're aiming to produce with our carrot, because carrot's a vegetable that takes a really long time to cook. So I'm going to cut it into quite thin strips to start off with, and then using a claw hold, I'm going to cut it into a julienne. So we've got lots of nice matchstick size pieces. I'm going to prepare a pepper. This one's already been cut in half and I've washed it because I'm going to eat the skin. I'm going to remove the stalk and any pith and seeds that are on the inside and get that all into the bin. And then I'm going to cut this into matchsticks as best I can. If yours is quite large, then these matchsticks could be quite long as you're cutting them. So if you do want them a little bit shorter, you could consider cutting the pepper in half. Now you can use any colour of pepper, and they're really nice for adding colour. So keeping all of my vegetables separate. Next one I'm going to do is the baby corn. So I've got some yellow now. These have been washed as well because I'm going to be eating the skin without peeling them. And with these, we're trying to create, same again, a bit of a matchstick. So you could cut them in half, or if they're a bit bigger, you could cut them into quarters. Okay, so you've got them in strips. Some people do like to, let's have these in quarters as well. Some people like to cut them into little discs. I'll show you what that looks like. Next ingredient I'm going to do is some mange too. You might have a different combination of vegetables, but the principle is always the same. We're trying to cut them into small pieces. These have been washed because we're obviously going to eat the skin. I like to remove the ends. You don't have to, but I like to just trim all of the ends off, and then we can cut them again into strips like we have with the other ingredients. Okay? Some people like to just cut them in half and have them like this. I like to just keep everything in strips. I think it's in the same shape then as the noodles. Lastly, I'm going to prepare some spring onions. So we want to take the stalks off the end, the roots, okay? And then this bit's quite woody on the top. We don't really want to use it past about the midway point. So I'm going to cut off this part. Sometimes you need to remove the outer layer. You're just going to have to play it by ear. Sometimes the outer layer will start to go a little bit dried up or a little bit brown, and you might need to take that off. These have been washed. And we've got two options again. We could stick with our theme of matchsticks and cut them into strips like this. Or some people will like to cut their spring onions into little rounds like this. I will prepare my ginger. So this is root ginger. It's fresh. The easiest way to get the brown skin off of this is to scrape it with a spoon. Okay, you just need to put a little bit of pressure on there. So my thumb is on the ginger and my first finger is moving the spoon. So just scrape all the way around that. This is much more than I actually need, but it's much easier to work with a larger piece because your fingers don't need to get quite so close to the grater. So I'm going to just cut the bits off on the ends that I haven't managed to get off with the spoon, and get rid of my waste. It's the larger side of the grater, and holding on to the end, we're going to grate down 2 to 3 centimetres of ginger onto the board. Give the grater a bit of a tap, and then you can scrape any off that's on the inside. Probably want about 1 tablespoon in total. Next, we're going to prepare the garlic. This is a whole bulb of garlic. We just want to use a clove or 2. So we're going to just break it open, take out a couple of cloves, like this, and we're going to remove the skin. You can do that in a couple of different ways. Some people like to crush them with the knife, and then they can normally find a way in with the skin. What I tend to do is just to cut each end off, and then make a little cut down the side of the garlic, and then I can just get into it to remove that skin. And then you've got 2 options. Get rid of the waste. 2 options. You can either use the smaller side of the grater to grate the garlic, or you can, again, tap that off, okay? Or you could use a garlic crusher where you would put the clove of garlic, once it's had the skin removed, into that, squeeze the two sides and the garlic will come out of there. You will normally still need to scrape it out and give it a bit of a chop though. I feel like because we've already used the grater and we're going to have to wash it up anyway, we may as well use the grater for our garlic. I'm going to turn this on at the wall. That's going to take the power through to the hob and the oven. Having a look at the top, we're going to need to use one of the larger rings. So one of you is going to go front left and you're going to use this dial here. The numbers go from 0 all the way around to 6. We're going to want a relatively high heat. I'm going to start with a 5. The partner is going to use the rear right, and you can see this one's a little bit different. There's an inner and an outer ring. We want both because we're using quite a large pan, which is going to need a large amount of heat. So in this instance, we're going to use the front, the rear right, is this dial here. You can see that you can turn it both ways. If you turn it left, it only heats up the middle. If you turn it right, it heats up both rings, both the inside and the outside, and it only goes up to 4. So 4 is the equivalent of 6 on the other one. So we're going to pop it onto a 3 if we're using this one. Okay. So I'm going to use this one at the front. So I'm going to get my frying pan on. I'm only going to start doing this once I've finished all of my preparation. So all my ingredients are here ready to go. I'm going to take some oil and some measuring spoons. So I'm going to measure out a tablespoon of oil. Allow that to come up to the heat. Now what I'll notice when I know it's heated is that oil is going to move a little bit more quickly than it does now. So I'm going to give that a minute to heat up. So my pan's feeling quite nice and warm. I can feel some heat coming from it. The oil just moves around a little bit easier. So I'm going to shush that around so it covers the bottom of the pan. I'm going to add these different ingredients in order of the hardest vegetable all the way through to the softest. If you have got carrot, that is always going to go in first. That is a really hard vegetable. Then using 2 spoons, we're going to stir it as we fry it. That's why it's called a stir fry. We're going to give that about 30 seconds. And then we're going to add in the next hardest vegetable. If we add everything in one go, all of the heat comes out of the pan and then all of a sudden it's not frying anymore, it's just boiling. So we just leave a little bit of time between each ingredient to allow the heat to come back up. Let's go in with the peppers. Give that a few moments and we'll go in with the next vegetable. These ones are all about equal, to be honest, in terms of how firm they are. And then I'm going to go in with my mange too. Now, anything like spring onions or bean sprouts, I'd leave them out for now. I'm going to give these about 2 minutes to cook. Cooking for a couple of minutes, I noticed that it's not burning and sticking, but it's still frying, it's not boiling, so I think my temperature is just right. Now I'm going to go in with my softest vegetable, which is my spring onion. If you've got bean sprouts, they would go in now as well. And give this a couple more minutes before adding the soy sauce and the other ingredients. So I'm cooking this now with all the ingredients, all the vegetables in for a couple more minutes. I notice it's still not burning, but my vegetables are starting to soften, so I'm happy with the temperature still. And I'm going to go in next with my last couple of ingredients. That is the fresh ginger and the garlic and the soy sauce. I'm going to put a couple of tablespoons of soy sauce in. It doesn't matter whether it's light or dark, or the reduced salt is a good option. I'm going to pour that in. I've got a bit of sizzling now, so I think I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Pop that down to the 3. Need to be really careful not to allow the ginger and the garlic to burn, because it will take on quite an offensive taste if we do. If you want to just really take all of the heat out of it, just feel free to lift the frying pan off of the heat. That's going to cool it down much quicker. I'm going to go in next with my noodles. There should be a little tab on the side of your packet of noodles that you can tear the top off. But if you can't find it, just grab yourself a pair of scissors. That will do the same job. Now, if you've got the ready-to-wok noodles like this, they can be quite firm in the block when they first go in. What I tend to do is just put a little bit of water over the top of them, because the pans can start to get a little bit dry. As the heat gets through to those noodles, they will start to break up, but do be patient and gentle with them. If you start breaking them up with your spoon, instead of being long noodles, you're going to end up with lots of little broken short ones. If you've bought the fresh noodles, you probably won't need to add any water. They're not quite as firm, and those can go in and you can just mix them through and coat them in the sauce. I'm going to give this a couple of minutes just to start to loosen off. You can see that the noodles are starting to just slacken off a little bit. Try and make sure that the pan is not too hot, because you don't want to overcook any of your vegetables, and if it starts to get a bit dry, just add a little bit more water. See that there are a couple of lumps of the noodles left still in there, but now the difference is when I just give them a little bit of a shimmy, they are starting to break up, and we just wanted to cook that through until all of it's nice and warm and coated in all of the sauce. My noodles are broken apart. I can see that I haven't used excessive heat, so I haven't got any ingredients burning onto my pan. Nothing has burnt. If you wanted to make this again at home, you could try using some different sauces. You could try adding using different types of noodles, udon noodles, rice noodles, for example, and you could also try adding some sources of protein, like some prawns, chicken, strips of beef or pork would work really nicely in this. Put this now into my container. I'm going to place a lid over it, make sure that it's named, and either pop it in the blast chiller if you're going to take it home with you, or if you're going to eat it for your lunch, you can take it away with you.